And anyways, thanks for joining us here on the Screen Level Fair podcast. I'm joined by Shea and Adriana. Shea was just in Germany. He flew across the pond. And Adriana has recovered from the bubonic plague. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, well, I guess I mean, I feel like honestly, I don't want to out Adriana with all of the details of her illness and her eyes and all of that. So I think for the viewers' sake, people could be eating when they listen to this, so we don't want to.
Yeah, let's just
We'll skip over that part if it's all the same to everybody. But yeah, no, on my end, I was at in Hamburg, Germany. For a work trip, and but of course I'm a terrible tourist. Like, I don't care about sightseeing and any of this. So
that's what I love about you when we've traveled, because I know you cut right to what's important.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why. Honestly, that's why the Austin trip was tied to the film festival, because I'm like, then I have stuff to do. And I don't have to feel guilty about not doing things. So I remember sending Adriana and Sarah. They're like, we're going to go to the State Building. I'm like, I'm not. I'm going to go to a movie theater. Have fun, guys. Love you both. Enjoy your time. But I was by myself for this trip. So what I did in advance was pick out the 3 different theaters. I think I posted about all of them on Instagram. But yeah, I saw 3 different theaters and saw 3 different movies. I watched Sinners with German subtitles, but oddly enough, and this I asked a friend that was there about this, was the Sinners title card, which just says Sinners on it, would come up, but the subtitles would say Blood in Sinners. And I was like, why the hell did they add blood to it? And apparently it's just German movies get title changes like that all the time to just make clear that yeah, there's blood in the movie, so, and it's gore. So that's why it was called Blood and Sinners, apparently. But there's not a lot. It's just super small, one theater or one screen theater. But super cool. All of them were great. The first 2 movies were the best crowds I'd probably been with in a hot minute. The third one at the bigger popular theater that I went to, but also I think the movies. So the second one I saw was From Dusk Till Dawn, which I was like, I don't know if it was seeing it in the
after
theaters.
Watching Sinners in German, you then saw Dusk Till Dawn.
It was in English. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was just.
But still,
English.
Those are very thematically.
It's literally, which I thought was great. Totally not part of the plan, but it was a great parallel, and I think that was such a fucking cool movie to watch in theaters. I genuinely, as that ended, I was like, was that the coolest fucking movie of all time? I'm not, maybe it certainly felt like that in the moment. And the whole Selma Hayek scene on the big screen was, I literally heard the 2 dudes beside me were like, oh, they made an audible whoa, which made me giggle during the bit. But yeah, that was, I'm like, this is the big theater difference. I've seen that movie before. I love that movie, but on the big screen, it just, the energy, and the crowd was great again. People were laughing. It was just such a good crowd for that. I do want to call out the German popcorn, though. They all of it, and this goes to the level of movie dork that I am, that I know the different kinds of popcorn kernels. But the standard Cineplex ones are butterfly kernels. That's the shape description. But if you ever get caramel corn, they're round and almost spherical. That's the mushroom kernels. All of the theaters in Germany use that, because when you get popcorn at those theaters, all of them were the same. And it's, do you want it sweet or salty? And so if you get it sweet, they have it's not like caramel corn, but it's a much thinner layer of some sort of sweet, it's probably sugar, water, whatever, but it's a layer on the popcorn of sweet. So I did mixed every time I went. But
Like half and half, or you did like one movie sweet, one movie salty?
no, like half and half. I just did it every time because
the Chicago mix of Germany.
Yeah, basically. And like it was like
German
every
mix.
theater had it. The Savoy, which was the last theater I went to, was like the biggest, more popular one. It was a little closer downtown. Super cool theater, like genuinely the coolest one I think I've ever been to. And for that we watched American Psycho, and that was a fun one to see with the crowd in this context. I think there's a lot of conversation around that movie these days, but I think the crowd that I was with was the good crowd on terms of for that movie. They're aware, and like there's a lot of people that have turned that into a thing where they embrace the character in a way that I in my experience watching that movie is a pretty clear wrong take to have from that movie. But
Hi, speaking as the guy that embraces Patrick Bateman, I
didn't want to out you, but yeah.
Yeah, I saw that movie at the Review Cinema like a year or two ago with a bunch of buddies, and we didn't realize how memed it had become in the zeitgeist. Mm-hmm. So every other scene, maybe it's different for you because of like the German screening, but every other scene they're like discussing the business card, and he's like sweating, and he's like, "Oh, let's see Paul Allen's," Everybody was just like, "It's that meme! It's the meme!" And I feel like you may have had a more pure experience because nobody was like the Leonardo DiCaprio like, "There it is!" like point at the screen moment that I kept having. I enjoyed it as a Bateman myself, but I feel like you got a more pure screening.
So I love that Brandon just instantly, when I was like, I think anyone that embraces Patrick Bateman are kind of fucked, and Brandon's like, I embrace Patrick Bateman.
You can always be smarter, be skinnier.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it was such a fun, to me, I feel like I would have been more bummed out if that was like laughing at all the memes, because there are a lot in that movie for sure that have become like more recently even. And
Huey Lewis in the news, just like that alone, exactly. That monologue.
But like I feel like people were really laughing at the like really awkward moments of just when he's like explaining his like the music tastes of like Genesis and all that. Like there was good bits there, but no, I love that. It's my favorite thing. Like I love those theaters. I love trying to go see like kind of the different experiences. And I made like a really lame cheesy bit, but I like it's true. Like wherever, like how similar and in a positive way like these theaters feel anywhere in the world. And I made the joke of something to the effect of like, even across the world, I still found like my home. Like it just, you settle right into that groove. It's all the same. And, just very comforting. And like I said, getting to see Sinners again, which I definitely wanted to do. Super bummed out because it was no aspect ratio changes, which makes us such a difference. It's so lame, but
it does. I think when we recorded, I was like, the aspect changes did nothing for me, and then I saw it on a standard screen a month later, and I kept being the guy in the theater like, this should be IMAX. This should change. So I'm glad you also had. I mean, you knew it would affect you. I was the guy that learned the lesson the hard way, and I was like, oh, it was so good.
I'm bummed that when I saw it, it was no longer playing in IMAX. So I missed out. I only found out about the aspect ratio changes after. So hopefully I can have that experience.
The home video,
the Blu-rays
yes, we'll have it, which is so great. I love that. I just want to show that out because none of the Dunes got released with the IMAX format. I would rather the home releases do that, but anyway,
I just
great
want to say, like, I really loved your little bit about finding home across the ocean, because it just kind of speaks to the universality of the movie-going experience and how communal it is, and like that's something that we talk about a lot and we kind of push for, is like keeping that alive. And it really is like everyone goes to the movies no matter where you are in the world. It's like such a big cultural thing. So,
and as a really big concessions guy, I super appreciate the value you've brought to the podcast discussing the differences in kernel type. That's what I'm here for, and you haven't let me down. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for sharing.
Of course, I'm happy to do it. That wherever I end up going in the world, you bet your ass I will be finding a theater to go to to fit my days. Yeah, like being able, like I wasn't there for very long. It was a Saturday, flew back Thursday, and I managed to get to 3 different movie theaters still. So in between all my work stuff too. So I was very good, grateful for that opportunity, and yeah, I love that, and I can't wait for the next whatever. We have not discussed this, but we got other film things out in the world for us to go and explore and see together. So I'm excited to where we'll all end up.
Well, speaking of being grateful for opportunities, I sure was grateful to see The Materialists this week. It was probably one of my favorite movies this year, but let's talk about it.
Just Materialists, by the way.
No, this.
Why do you always do that? I thought that, but I wasn't confident enough to say it, and I should have just assumed that if Brandon's hitting it with then it's probably like you're the anti-Justin Timberlake from friggin'. Drop the. Brandon always adds the.
Whenever there is a it's gone, and when there isn't one, you add one. It's.
Yeah, like I'm the Facebook, but when it comes to, I can't even think of a movie that, like, I missed the on. Anyways, but
yeah, let's talk about Materialists.
Yeah, let's talk about.
And I want you to let me. Well, okay, before I let Brandon unleash, because I want to unleash you. I want to not talk for 10 to 15 minutes until I need to fully comprehend all your stuff. No, I genuinely need this because, frankly, I was baffled that you liked this movie. And honestly, not even to make this even more of a hot take, I'm even more baffled that anyone could feel that strongly about this movie, which I thought was a bit of a mess. And by a bit of a mess, I mean it was very like I kind of just was baffled by it. In the sense of like, I'm like, I don't know what this was really going for. It felt like it was trying like a lot, and it was cynical, and then it wasn't cynical, and it kind of was, and I'm like, okay, maybe that's like because sometimes we're cynical and sometimes we're not as cynical about love, and I get that, but I feel like if that was what it was going for, it didn't really succeed at that feeling. But all in all, on my high level spoiler free thoughts, I don't know that I would recommend this to anybody. I gave it a 2.5. Because there were things about it that I liked. Like it wasn't a terrible movie, but it wasn't a good one either. And so I just feel like I posted in my Letterboxd review was just the shrug emoji. That's how I felt about this movie. So then when I come out of that, open Letterboxd and see that you dropped a 4.5 out of 5, I was like, I need to hear what the fuck he adored so much about this. So.
I also, like, I don't know you as well as Shea, obviously, but when I thought both of you would, like, not like it, or at the most, like, just kind of find it, I don't know, whatever. So when you said I loved it in the group chat, I was like, oh, he's fucking with me. I legit was like, there's no way. Like, and then I saw your review and was like, oh no, he's serious. Okay.
I really love it. Yeah, I proposed to that movie.
Before
I wanted you to talk about
it. So I like was really, really looking forward to this movie for a long time because I am a huge fan of Past Lives. That movie is like one of my favorite movies of the last few years, and like kind of hit me in a very personal, emotional way. So I was like super like hyped for this. I was trying to tamper my expectations. So it might be a little bit of a like I went in with a little too high expectations and it just wasn't what I was expecting it to be. But I also came away a little bit baffled and like unsure how I felt, because there were definitely things about it that I really liked, and then there were other things that confused me, and I wasn't sure how to how to take. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and for the like, just to be clear, I want, if those, you know how the three of us feel, if either of that sways your non-spoiler opinion, I need to let Brandon go. I don't want you to be vague on details. Like, I really want you to just dive right into this. So, spoil away. And like, I need to understand how you adored this movie so much. I'm excited for this.
Okay, so here we go. Are you ready for my real opinion? Completely not a sarcastic take. So, this is the best MCU crossover of all time. You have Reed Richards from Fantastic Four, Pedro Pascal, trying to get Dakota Johnson, Madame Web, in bed, while Captain America, my boy, is vying for her attention as well, and he's her ex-lover. So this is the best MCU crossover in the last decade. Has Endgame dwarfed by this movie. Top 10, would recommend. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I really yeah, I was waiting to use that bit. Actually, so going into this movie, I was actually not thrilled to see this. Not to get into all of our off-air conversations, but I wasn't thrilled to see this. I was kind of thinking like, well, I miss Adriana. The one movie she really wants to see is this. I'll see it so we can talk about it this weekend, and I'm so glad I did, because genuinely I know I was just ultra hammy there. This was a movie that really spoke to me. I really loved it. Corny and all, top tier film. So I went in with like rock bottom expectations. The only selling point, which also became my selling point, was my girlfriend Renata, friend of the podcast, had said this is a red pill psyop to make the modern feminist women lower their standards for broke men. And I can see that take very clearly now that I've
hold on.
digested
I
it.
need you to slow that down for me one more time.
So when Doctor Doom fought Reed Richards...
No, not the details. I need that... Just say that again. Just slow down. I was like doing a line. So a red pill psyop...
Okay, so The Materialists is a movie where our main character, Dakota Johnson, Madame Web, has to pick between two men. One is wealthy, one is her loser ex-boyfriend. Right. There's a lot more to it, but based on how the movie turns out and the themes and the way they're discussed, it's a red pill. Red pill referring to the manosphere, referring to like MGTOW, men that go their own way.
I'm with you.
Divorced dads, if you will. A lot of people I know, it seems. It's a psyop, so it's people who have nothing to do with Hollywood, basically, the most conservative men making a Hollywood movie to teach young liberal women to date broke men because of love and stop materializing their love for men. And this movie hits that beat really, really well, I would say, if not very on the nose. And I think this is the first red pill movie recommendation ever. Like, I think, just putting that out there, but I think a huge thing is being a slightly conservative leaning male. When the Barbie movie came out and I felt so isolated from my friend group because I absolutely adored Barbie, that's when I'm like, conservative men don't get movies. I'm out. Like I can't associate with these people too much. I gotta find my own thing. And I think this movie really lives in both worlds, maybe unsuccessfully to some, but I found it was the right amount of tongue in cheek, cutting women down for certain materialist values, and cutting men down for some shallow values. I think there's some really great bits to get into the spoiler half, maybe I'll talk about, but I found myself laughing very consistently. It reminded me a little bit of Friendship, where the whole crowd was going along with the whole movie the whole time, is benefited by being in a theater. And for the first time in a long time, I really feel like there's this movie that was so, like, the joke wasn't just men are dumb, haha, that's so funny, they're all Homer Simpson. It was like, this bitch is shallow. And it's explored more thoughtfully as the movie progresses, where, she dates on paper, she dates based on a certain criteria, and that's smart, everyone should have that. But I think it really does, like, the men are from Mars, women are for Venus thing, more thought-provokingly, or at least more consistently, than a lot of other rom-coms. It's not just, The Notebook, where the woman has two dreamboat men, but she's going to pick the immature one that's Ryan Gosling in The Rain. She's going to stand up the other dude with the family money and all that. You know what I mean? Like, it is essentially the same story where the woman goes with the guy who is broke, spoiler, for the end of the movie. But there is so much happening in that, and there is no real antagonist, I would say, because even Pedro Pascal, who in a normal rom-com is the villain, he's the wealthy city guy that, his sin is doing his job and not caring about what his girlfriend does. He's busy on the phone while she's trying to talk to him, and she ends up going back to her broke waiter ex-boyfriend who's trying to be a theater actor. And in a normal Hallmark movie, Pedro Pascal would be an asshole for the way he's just busy, competent, and to afford his $500,000 or sorry, his 500K plus salary that they kept talking about. He's a busy guy, so I think it's really awesome that they humanize Pedro Pascal, the hallmark big city asshole boyfriend, for like half the movie, for like the first and part of the second act, before they pivot and she realizes she has to date on not math. Love shouldn't have math. I think that's a really good theme. I think like when you talk about what love is, if you have math involved, that means you're a logical creature, but love is such an unlogical thing. And I love a movie that can find a tone like that and make that its whole thing. No matter how stupid, no matter how crazy, no matter how crazy stupid love it feels, it is just about proving that you got to go with what you feel. And I think like it's really important that this movie had that theme, and it doubled down into it. And I know it kind of ends in more of a cornball way, but it felt a little earned because they spend so much time with Dakota Johnson resenting and rejecting the love that she knows and she felt to date what she thought to date the unicorn. And I just was so endeared and won over by love not requiring math. And there's a bunch of other stuff, like I'm a wedding videographer. I've had that conversation about not working out at a wedding, where it's like I work every weekend in my 20s so I can afford a life and a house with a partner who ends up leaving me because I'm too busy. So like I've been Chris Evans, like, so the scene where they're at the wedding and they're watching it like vultures in the ditch, as they're happening, and they're making fun of their love story. That to me is like every other weekend for me as a wedding guy. So I just, on a personal level, the moments felt too real. And then on like a thematic level, I liked how stupid and crazy love's supposed to feel. And that I agree with the messaging. I agree that love shouldn't have math, and it's impossible to love without thinking of math, because we're all adults. We're in a recession. This is a recession based rom-com. I don't know, for the time we're living in and for my personal life, it just like when I went in thinking, some rom-com that women on TikTok think is a psyop to date broke guys, this is going to be trash with a bunch of virtue signaling. And by the end of it, even if some people felt that, I laughed probably 80% of the jokes. I cried twice. I full-blown cried. Yeah, dude.
When?
It was near the end when Chris Evans and her are talking. The cinematography, like, we'll get into it. But the cinematography in this movie was a lot smarter than I think some people are going to give credit. I thought you were taking your headphones off to leave. You're like, I'm fucking out. No, there's a few scenes, but like the conversation between Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson at the wedding, where he's talking about how he hasn't changed. Like, his apartment was cute for 20s, but now he's in his 30s. He is the same guy. And I know it's corny, the consistent thing is he still loves her. When we were talking about, my girlfriend and I were talking about like things that you may have missed, the scene when she finally calls him to tell him about the thing that happened at work that's been offending her and upsetting her the whole time, which I did find to be like a little bit of like, writing wise, it felt like a very forced drama that added a lot of fleshing out.
Don't worry, I'll get to that.
We'll get to that, because I also would agree that was like a good thing for the script, but not necessarily like something that worked for me. But so the point though is, when she calls him, Chris Evans, he, like, I don't know if you noticed this, but it's him leaving a convenience store, and he like hurries up, he answers his phone, and he slowly literally drops the sandwich he just bought, his bag, his backpack, and he literally drops everything he's doing to listen to her. And I feel like that was just such a small thing that, like, I don't know, I picked up on, and I was just like, that's huge. Because the scene before was her having a magical night with Pedro Pascal, wakes up, he's cooking her food, but he's on the phone, and that's the closest it gets to that hallmark one-for-one, like, busy city guy versus like broke schleppy guy. Is Pedro Pascal is this high-value male who's a little busy, but he's still a great partner. He loves the edge she brings. He loves their empathy. Like, there's a lot of good character relatability there. But yeah, the first scene where you can see maybe why that door is open and why there's a real thing there is very physically real, where Pedro Pascal's like, here's the keys to my place. You have all my affection. I trust you. Here's my thing. I got to go. Leaves. And Chris Evans, in the opposite, he has nothing of her, but he gives her everything he has, which is his attention. Drops all of his stuff and sits down in the streets of New York to take her phone call when she's deeply upset. And it's like, it's a small detail, but I was like, the choices like that have a lot more thought behind them. So that was the thing that won me over when I was initially like, oh, what a funny little rom-com, to being like, this is a little bit more thoughtful. There's a little bit more going on here. And I guess for me, it fired on all cylinders. It didn't miss much. And that's why I truly like it. I think like I love Crazy Stupid Love, and this movie gave me the same giddy full way through like kind of feeling, I guess. So I don't know. It's weird. I think I'm really critical about a lot of movies we've talked about for different and sometimes bad reasons. But I feel like for this movie, for my like personal like lived experience, I just like I'm getting lost. But I absolutely adored all of this, and I wish I could have formatted that a little bit more concisely. But
No, that was what
No,
you
I
want.
think
I
it
wanted
makes
to
sense.
give you the runway because
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adriana.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you keep referring to it as a rom-com. And I don't want this to turn into like monkey. Is it actually horror, comedy, whatever? But
don't worry, I thought of that.
because I think like the marketing is very deliberate. Like the trailers and stuff kind of make it out to be a typical rom-com, but I would not call this movie a rom-com, like in the classic sense.
What
of,
about
like,
a
the
dramedy,
90s.
a drama comedy?
Well, so it's definitely like more dramatic than a rom-com, but it's kind of playing with the tropes and the beats of the classic rom-com. But then
would you call it
to
an
me-
elevated rom-com?
no, fuck that. No, to me it was like a really weird movie. Like it's hard to put it in one box because I think Celine Song is like very interested in exploring specific themes, and I think almost to a fault, like the stuff is almost hammered over your head a little bit. Like it felt fairly heavy-handed to me, but I thought those themes were like super interesting, like the question of value. What does that mean in today? And like, because in some ways marriage relationships have always historically been, you know, a financial proposition, right?
Yeah, if the whole movie was
but
that, telling us relationships are transactional, I would have checked out so quickly. But I think
Yeah.
they handle it with such nuance that it landed for me. So I see what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Well, I mean, to me, I found it to be like deeply cynical about like
Oh,
modern
yeah.
dating, and then it kind of goes back on that a little bit, and I've been trying to really figure out how I feel about this movie. So I've been reading interviews with her, and she talks about like love and all of this in a very sincere way, and like I feel like those two aspects of the movie didn't fully come together for me. And even the ending, like it kind of ends on the like there, it's very cynical and like I don't know, subverting the sort of classic tropes, and then there's this very like dramatic kind of out of the blue subplot that's very serious. And then the ending, they get back together, they have that magical moment, they meet in this beautiful part of Central Park, and he
Yeah, the
proposes,
caveman
and
ring, which is
Yeah,
like
and it's
very
sort of
tied in kind of thing.
the classic like romantic ending, but then like that's not actually the final scene of the movie, which this part I do actually like, and a lot of people in my theater just like fully walked out while the credits were rolling during the you get this final shot in the credits of New York City Hall, and you see a bunch of couples and stuff
Yeah.
there to sign their marriage licenses, and you can see Lucy and fucking whatever Chris Evans' character.
I just call him Chris
They're
Evans.
in there. You kind of watch this play out, and it's both like the least romantic kind of way to get married, and yet there's still, you see people dressed up and excited and all this, and it's sort of like there's a question. It leaves you with a question of like, okay, will this marriage actually work out? Are they actually meant to be together? I don't know. It felt kind of like it was trying to have its cake and eat it too, but it didn't fully work for me, like on a first watch. The other thing that I did actually find the comedy there is like a bit of comedy in it for sure, especially in the beginning. That worked for me quite well, and the bit with Pedro Pascal's leg surgery fucking killed me too. But theater was dead silent. No one was laughing, and I
have
was
a good
like,
theory on that, which we'll come back to. Really good theory on that. Okay, so I don't mean to interrupt here, but I have to because one of the best bits is his leg surgery. It's Chekhov's gun, Chekhov's leg surgery, where they talk about at the start. It's not about being tall or short. It's about having the money to fix that kind of thing. Like, again, it's heavy-handed, but the fact they reincorporate it. But the scene after they have this big, heartfelt chat in his kitchen, and part of you may never accept that she was breaking up with him for whatever reason. But when he talks about how like everything changed, it wasn't just women. It was like going through the airport. Just life in general got better when he got taller. Like, I have a ton of short friends, and they talk about that experience all the time. I always hear the phrase, and Shea probably gets this too, if I was your size. I hear that all the time. And I never think about it. So if there's this weird thing that I felt like very empathetic towards, and like, again, the manosphere element, the red pill world, the men suffering, the short men out there who are also broke are doubly fucked. There's this thing with that scene, though, that really landed for me, because it's very serious, but it's kind of corny, being the fact that he's talking about this, like, leg-breaking surgery and how important it was. And she breaks it down to, like, oh, your brother got it, and thank God he did. That was a non-negotiable for his bride. And it's like, I felt like I was living on the razor's edge for that, because I was like, wow, that's wild. But the point being, when he starts doing the thing in that conversation where she's like, wait, so what was that, 6 inches? And you see Pedro Pascal start like kneeling down and shrinking. And without adjusting the camera or the angle, you can see how different he was and how more at her eye level she was. And just with that blocking of the shot, you get what he was talking about. Where, like, of course, if our beloved Pedro Pascal was 5'6", I don't think he would be a leading man. Not everyone could be Tom Cruise, you know. So I mean,
Tom Cruise is not a great example to use, who's notoriously short.
But... Well, that's what I'm saying. Not everybody can be notoriously short and also a Hollywood actor. Okay. So he's the best. So my point is, in that scene, you know, that they've been talking in that framing, he then physically shrinks down. It was a bit like a joke, like, this is what I actually should look like. But thematically, the audience and me and, you know, a lot of people in the theater got it. It was a big laughing roar in my theater, but I was also like, true, like, that's true. I know so many people that talk like, dude, if I was your size, I could talk to women, I could do all, you know. I know a lot of guys that make height like a big deal, and I'm fortunate enough to be 6'3", by the way, and it's brutal, and I thought they really handled that thing, that element,
I call
really
bullshit,
well in the movie.
by the way.
Sure.
Like, how many like billionaires out there who are short or ugly or whatever just have young hot wives who are just marrying them for money? Like, maybe, I don't know, like, he would have been fine, I'm sure, but you know what, if you have enough money
like,
to break
he says,
your legs to
okay,
get taller, then...
I need to interject because I have issues on both things that you guys were talking about, but on that, I think it was more, the line he uses is that if I looked at you like this, I wouldn't have had the confidence to hit on you. Yeah. And that part, like, without that initial part, then none of the other stuff can happen. So, yes, like, I see what you mean there, but I feel like you guys are zoomed so far in when there are so many problems on the surface with this movie that I can't get over the fact that you like, you were saying, like, oh, this very serious bit in their breakup conversation. I was like, are they both this shitty at acting, or is this supposed to be shitty? And I had such a struggle on every serious beat that this movie tried to hit, outside of the super serious subplot, which we'll get to in a separate bit, where that performance was more straight. But again, Dakota Johnson, I don't get her. But even in that moment, I was kind of baffled, because, like, on her, I was, I guess, more prepped or whatever, and, like, could expect that. But I feel like I have not seen such a lifeless, flat performance from Pedro Pascal. And, like, I've heard people talking about, is that their chemistry was off. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I like, they were so bad individually that the chemistry part didn't even register for me. And so and like all of the stuff you were saying, Brandon, about the themes and whatever, that to me was like maybe a third of the movie. Like there was so much other baggage, and I call it baggage because this is what I mean by a baffling mess. Like I feel like there's a whole other like 2/3 of the movie that doesn't even really get acknowledged if we only talk about the love triangle, which to me is like maybe a third and ultimately becomes the end of the movie. But
I think it's 2/3 of the movie.
Not even close, I don't think. Because I think there's like a whole individual arc with Dakota Johnson and her career and her life and just who she is. And like obviously that sort of bleeds into the relationship component. But then there's the whole subplot with one of her clients. But like even again, like just zooming back out before I get too granular again.
Yeah.
I was fucking annoyed by the fact that she has this realization in the conversation with Pedro Pascal, and then for the next 30 minutes of the movie, she has to have the realization again. Like, she breaks up with him on this concept of, like, it's not math, and she has this revelation and all of that, and that works with the movie. I'm totally fine with that. Calls him for what you assume is that reason, but then we have 20 minutes of her realizing this, and like they fight about it, and they have this contrived moment, which again just like wildly didn't work for me on a performance level. And I just was kind of like baffled by it, and I don't understand. Like, I didn't get any of like heart or serious, like, in anything the movie was trying to make me feel, I feel like was so fumbled in the execution that I couldn't get there. There was an undercurrent of like interesting ideas, like even again the more comedic sides of those meetings with her clients, men and women, and like listening to them talk about it was really funny. Like it had moments where it was smarter, but like it was just such a mess that I never really honed in on any of it. And I was really like, and just to pivot again to the subplot, we've danced around this, but basically where
should we save the subplot? The subplot's going to be a big chunk of this.
Well, okay, but I guess just to tie it in loosely without getting into it, but my problem with that is that my initial thought on it was that it was meant to be a motivator for her to be like, oh, the science of what I know is wrong. Like, the math isn't all that there is. I thought that was meant what that was supposed to be. But then there's also a line where when there are like having a fight where she not confronts her client, but like talks to her client, whatever. And she says, like, all of that shit he told you was a lie. So by saying that line, you're undercutting the idea that the math doesn't work. She had the wrong information. So, like, I didn't understand the relevancy at that point of why this subplot even existed. And it was such a prominent part of the movie, and it was such like an emotional catalyst for different beats in the movie, but I ultimately was left confused about its inclusion in terms of like how it fit into the bigger picture. And it felt like in the end to me is more of a plot device than a narrative one. And baffling is the word to use.
I would agree to that. I would agree it felt more like a plot device than a narrative one. It is a plot device that does help flesh out some of the themes, but it does feel a little like that is probably the sloppiest element, and like you said, the most forced dramatic element, I guess. It's a serious
heavy.
theme.
Like,
it's very heavy, very heavy.
Yeah, which is again, sorry, I just want to say it's not that like heavy is a problem, but if you use heavy as a plot device, that's a problem to me, because it deserves the seriousness of that, deserves something more than just a reason to move the plot along. I feel like I
agree with you. Like, I think the execution of it was my biggest issue, and I do think in part it was intended to contribute to her realization that like, oh, you know, like we can't know people on paper, and there's an like intangible
Yeah.
part to this that like you can't predict. And the other prong of that was like when the client confronts her and is like, I forget exactly how she frames it, but is like, I'm not just merchandise or whatever. Like, it's sort of to confront Dakota Johnson's character.
The cynical
with,
elements, yeah.
Yeah, to like show that as much as she thinks she's like helping these people, she's just trading in the same thing, like yet again. Like, she's just kind of treating people as like surface level.
Yeah, she's like a commission-based friend, and
Yeah.
that scene is to show us and her to grow into being more than that, because that's a shitty person to be. It's a commission-based friend.
But
I get why it's there, but it's a lot.
You could have
It's a
had
lot.
that same conversation if the critical event never happened. If you were like, you've sent me on 15 dates and they all suck and like whatever, and that same conversation could have had that. And like, I feel like
Yeah.
you're just plugging me into anyone that will go out with like, all of that could have been exactly the same for that purpose, and the, inciting incident or whatever did not need to happen for that same conversation to happen,
Yeah.
which is, again, why I'm like, so why did you have it?
I'm kind of with you. Like, it feels very like
forced.
abrupt, and like
They needed
I don't
something
know.
serious to happen that wasn't Dakota Johnson being wooed by two of the best men in Hollywood right now. And I get that.
but-
I get that.
I have a question too, but go ahead, Adriana.
I just wanted to go back because you mentioned like, let's go bigger picture. Let's talk about the
I'll tell you about how I
performances.
cried twice. Go on.
And so this is sort of related, but I think that's something that baffled me too a little bit. Like, I didn't feel the emotional impact that I feel like I was supposed to have, but then at the same time I was also like, is this the emotional impact that I was supposed, like, is it deliberate that they're sort of, I do think in the case of Pedro Pascal, like,
Yes, and I
he
wanted to
was
come back to that.
supposed to be kind of
Neutered
flat,
completely.
and
Yeah.
they're not supposed to have chemistry because they're not really
Dating on
attracted to each
paper.
other. Yeah, they're
the
just
objective is to get married. Like, I was going to
using
defend
each
that.
other for their
Yeah.
value, right? But the bigger issue with all of that for me is that the characters don't have any depth. Like, I don't know. I felt like
Wow.
I don't know these people beyond, like, yeah, Chris Evans has roommates and he hates he's poor and has roommates and wants to do theater. And then, like, Dakota Johnson to me was the most interesting, just because, like, I do
my
kind
God.
of love her like affectless, however that letterbox GPS navigation voice, like,
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know.
actually such a slam. I love that take.
She just,
I disagree with almost everything, by the way, but that take was so spot. The GPS narrator voice, holy cow!
But I
Sorry.
mean, to me, these characters were just like complete ciphers that were like just saying, these profound lines to explain the themes of the movie, and that just totally like took me out of whatever
In such
the
an
movie was trying to do,
unconvincing
and
way. Yeah.
made
I
me
do-
wonder
yeah.
what the movie was actually trying to do. So
I do have, like, so I guess my holy trinity defense for this argument, one was Pedro Pascal's not supposed to have the same level of charisma or riz as we would hope.
No,
from
but
him.
okay, hold on.
Okay.
He definitely has Riz at the beginning. That's the whole bit.
yeah,
What
yeah,
I'm
he
not,
does
I'm
that.
not talking about Riz. I'm talking about, which I fucking hate.
That's my new
saying in
ringtone.
a non-ironic bit. I'm not talking about Riz. Like, his performance sucked. It was not that it was like, okay, like, and again, like, it was a baffling thing. Like, it just, like, even when he was rizzing it up a little bit and trying to woo her at the wedding and shit, like, the way, like, in the room, and like how everyone in the room like seemed to like him so much and all this stuff, like, I felt like I was getting that enough from the performance, but like, it just was, he was just so, like, I felt like he just matched Dakota Johnson's flatness in the whole thing, and I was like, again, from you can sell
As
me
you
on
would
like a
in a
lack
dating
of riz
scene.
or a more riz, but like it was just a baffling thing. But I think he had that higher, not energy, but like again, he was more
It petered
charismatic,
off,
and then
yeah.
it definitely like walls out, and I felt like it got worse as it went on for sure.
Okay,
No,
well, I guess
didn't even
my
really feel it in the beginning that much. Like it, maybe a little bit, but
so never mind. Discount one part of my triangle, my holy trinity here. So whatever about Pedro. My thing was going to my big one here. I was going to agree with you guys. Dakota Johnson's not a good actor in my opinion. But this material is perfect for her in the sense where, yeah, she is like a conduit of the script. She is just saying, a man needs to make over 150K to be considered middle class on the marketplace. Like, I think this movie could have been called The Marketplace, but people would have been more polarized and hated it. You know what I mean? Like, I dug it a lot again, but I think Dakota Johnson was like, again, like a spiritual mouthpiece for the script, and she works good for that. I didn't need her to emote that much at all, because she's like a sounding board for like I think Chris Evans stands out a lot in this movie because he is so much of that like charming kind of character he's known for playing, compared to him being kind of a grubby guy in Red One. This grubby guy, way more likable, way more entertaining. I don't know. I just again I
No, but
I
her
dug
flatness as a main character that I'm supposed to have an emotional beat with, it doesn't work. Like if she was more like a secondary
I never cared about
character,
her. She was going to be fine no matter
well,
what.
but I
cared about
like
the men in this story. I got to be clear about that. The boys are why I teared up. Okay, so let's scratch all of this criticisms. Okay. So the two scenes that I absolutely bawled at. One was the Pedro Pascal one, where he's like, I have it all. The thing I don't have that I can't figure out, no matter how hard I try, is love. I feel like an idiot. I feel like an idiot because I'm dating based on what I should and what I feel, and it's still not right. That got me. I welled right the fuck up. That was right after the the 5'6" bit, or right before. Anyways, that part, I one solid tear to one of these. Like I was very, very, very emotional. And then the Chris Evans bit, like I think 3 times. I think it was at the wedding when you know he puts his foot down. He's like, I'm not just gonna be this guy you bounce back off of. Like if there's one thing I know and I am is the person that loves you. And it's like he is not moving. He's not grown. He's potentially what you might critique as like a 2D character. He's got like 2 things. He's like trying to be an actor, has no money, loves Dakota Johnson. That's all he's got going, and that's all he had 5 years ago. That's all he has now, and that's kind of again the hallmark part, the part where Adriana, which again I also disagree with, the ending. I think it should have been way more ambiguous. I think it should have been like, haha, thanks for the 200K raise. I gotta go, and she looks up, cut to black. Like I'm on a hot date, cut to black. Because I hated how much they wrapped it up. And even what you said about the town hall wedding, I think this is where, again, I'm very biased. I mean, that's what opinions are. They're just personal biases. But, you know, like, I think all the wedding banter, the 2 weddings in the movie, one being really rural in the country, one being in New York City, and that's where she basically gets to fall in love with each guy or have that meet cute, you know? Contrasted between Perfect and Easy versus a genuine argument at the wedding. After one of my favorite lines was like kind of like in Everything Everywhere All at Once, when he says like I would love to do taxes with you. It's like the big line, laundry and taxes with you in another lifetime. In this movie, when the line that hit me just as hard or whatever was which is funny because I was saying how much I don't like Dakota Johnson, but her line when Pedro Pascal's like, yeah, I know. I don't really get love. I don't get why people argue in the streets. And then she's like, I'm people who argue in the streets. I busted such a laugh out of that because it was like, yeah, that's fucking, that's dating. That's love without math. Like, I think like maybe again, I'm white trash here, but I think the way it chose to reincorporate the themes and some of the lines that did it for me, were always landing for me. And again, with the second scene I welled up at was, Chris Evans explaining how he's not going to be enough. But she's there and he's there, and at the end when he restates it, I guess it's just like this personal acceptance that you don't normally see from a Chris Evans type. You never see the small town Hallmark guy say, well, if you do, it's corny. You don't think about it because they get married at the end of the movie and everything's fine. And that's kind of what I hate about this. I wish it left it more ambiguous because
the
movie shouldn't end in a wedding or a funeral.
I actually agree with you about the ending. Like, I do think this. I was sort of defending it a bit earlier, but that was.
Well, I like the town hall wedding. I actually love that, but I think it could have been way better.
But I actually would go even further. I think they should have all ended up alone at the end. Like, I think it should have committed.
Yes. Let me hone in.
I'd agree to that
on this and slide in here because I have questions for you two. Is the first part is I really want, or actually we should do this part second. My first question was, yes, Chris Evans has this moment in revelation of himself and like an acceptance, and I was down with this. And frankly, what I thought would happen was that she would then set him up with her other client, who is so desperate for precisely that kind of person, and say, because, okay, and let me just say, maybe that specifically plot point didn't happen, but what did happen was he had a revelation about himself, and she never had any revelation that made me think she would accept him. There was never a moment that felt like this obvious, clear, impactful bit where she'd be like, you know what, the fact that you're poor and I fucking hate all of these things about you, I don't care about that. That never happened in a convincing, meaningful way to me. So it's not necessarily that should have happened, but he had this acceptance of himself that I never felt like she had. So it made the ending confusing to me, and so I guess leading into my second part for you two is I really want to understand how you guys interpreted that ending, because I never once believed at any point in that ending sequence that this was going to work. And then when they went and did this wedding, like it changed nothing for me. I remained like wholly unconvinced about any of it. But I can't tell again if it's just because Dakota Johnson fucking sucks at acting in this movie, so I just didn't believe it, or if the movie even wanted me to believe it. Like, I still don't know. And so, like, you guys seem more sure, at least about your feelings of this ending, and I would be curious to hear, like, how you interpreted that, because I never once believed that she had this epiphany about all the things I hate about you
I think that's the Pedro
work.
Scene. It's the scene where she rejects modernity.
But she does the whole fight again for 20 more minutes.
She says, I don't want a Mercedes-Benz. I want a Camaro, and I want to have lawn furniture and cigarettes and arguments in the public. I think when she rejects Pedro, that's her growth, and it's built in. Her arc with him concludes, and I treated that like her jumping off and reopening the door. I think there's a pivotal scene after they go to see Chris Evans' performance where they're at the bar, and Dakota Johnson's been upset all day, and Chris Evans leans in to be like, what's wrong? What's wrong, friend? We're friends. And you expect in a traditional rom-com for him to knock it out of the park, give her consolidation, a shoulder to cry on, that she knows only he can give her. And he fucks it up. He's just like, oh, I'm sure it's not so bad. You'll get him next time. And she's like, you always know how to like upset me. And and I think like in the adult world, when you have that relationship of a failure to launch kind of relationship, and you stay friends, that would be a moment that would terminally end a relationship or friendship. And I kind of agree with you where it was so real, but the swing back round does feel a bit convenient. But I did, as somebody who liked the movie a lot, bridge the gap and was just like, her rejecting Pedro logically meant she was coming to terms with the fantasy of why she broke up with Chris Evans, of like, I can't be my mom and dad. I got to run as far and fast away as possible for her to get to where she wanted and still feel an emptiness. And I know Dakota Johnson is not a great actress, and it didn't come across, but I think like based on my understanding or feeling, I guess, I was just like, it came across very clear to me that was kind of, again, reject modernity, embrace tradition, and that's what I got from the breakup to Pedro to go to Chris Evans. So that's where I bridge the gap. But I would love to hear what Adriana has to say, because I feel like I don't always have the best take.
I mean, I'm kind of on the same page as you, Shea. Like, I don't feel like the ending. Well, no, I already kind of said this. Like, the rom-com ending didn't feel earned based on what came before, and I think the final shot sort of puts a little question into it, but I still think like they should have ended it with everyone alone. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think they. Yeah, I think that would have been a lot more true to like what the movie was up to like the last third or whatever. Whenever they drive off upstate.
Well, let
Yeah.
me hone in on this for you, then, Brandon. If to speak for Adriana and I, who clearly are totally aligned on this, I there's no moment and there's nothing established to me that clearly makes me believe that Dakota Johnson. You can't just decide suddenly, I don't give a fuck about any of all these problems that have been the driving force of my brain. Like, it doesn't, like, her issues, surface level as they may be, like, you don't just grow out of that because you decide I don't care about money now. Like, so in my head, like, okay, so this example of her getting the call for the job, I don't understand why the fuck that matters.
Well,
like,
I
why
think that's
can't she
what-
take the fucking job?
Yeah, well, she probably was
And-
because so my sorry.
Well-
So I think the implications of the ending, which I
Yes.
hate, when Adriana said, "Oh, the town hall wedding is so less romantic," it means they might not work out. 1,000% disagree. But her
Well,
getting
no. So I never
her
said
getting
it
the
was
phone call.
less. I think it's.
Will it work out because it's low
both.
budget? Like
No.
okay, so we'll come back to that. But my ending, my qualms with it, I love the town hall wedding thing. I love showing all these couples because the town hall wedding to me is somebody who shoots weddings. I've been to 250 weddings. I go to so many goddamn weddings, and when people choose to get town hall and not go nuts on the budget, it means to me like they value their commitment. They value fucking up their lives with divorces and prenups and children. Like, marriage is a raw deal, and like I think love is the ultimate antithesis to that modern take that marriage is whatever, like a bad deal. It's not about land property, it's just a bad deal.
Well,
So
just to quickly interject and say that maybe I would contend that you're both wrong in the sense that you're right. There's people that are like, we're so confident, we're solidified in our feelings and choices, we're doing this wedding, but then half of the people in that final scene are also like, we met yesterday, let's go fucking get married at the town hall.
The tuxedo
I think
t-shirt
it's
guy
very
killed
much
me.
both.
That was
Yeah,
which
my
yeah.
I
whole
think
point.
is the
that
point.
it's
Yeah.
that was my point too. Is that it's
Okay.
both. Like, and that's.
But
sort
by
of what
being
she's
both
going
ultimately
for.
is not either. And again,
Yeah,
I still
but-
don't understand
sorry,
what
I
the
just
fuck
wish they
was
didn't get
trying to
married.
say.
Just to go back to the job offer thing. So
the job
I think
offer I
this
hated.
is-
Yeah.
Well, so this is, I think the importance of that is that, because she never declines it, she never accepts it, it's up in the air, right? She might still accept it. The importance of that is if she takes it and it'll put her into yet another, like, it'll
Financial
move them
bracket
further away, like,
in the marketplace.
class-wise. And it's like yet another thing that could come between them potentially, you know? It's that material reality that like sometimes does actually have an impact. But it's like, it's so... What?
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
go
Sorry,
ahead.
Shay, hold on. I think
Okay.
hold on. Can I predict what you're
Go.
going to say? Because my thing is, based on what the movie presents us for the whole movie, again, the reason why I bridged the gap in that scene is now we, the audience, have learned what Dakota Johnson's learned about love and whatnot. And I feel like that job offer at the end, for the opposite reason, it's not ambiguous at all. I feel like when the lady on the phone goes, "Name your price," she's implying you can make enough money for both of you so he can pursue it. Like, I think it's wrapping up in the most Hallmark way, where she's the boss girl getting the best job.
I definitely
No,
don't
I
think
disagree.
that's my interpretation.
I think
I
they set
don't-
it up for that potential, and that ruins it for me
I
a
don't
little
think
bit.
we're
That's on the
supposed to
table.
take the ending at face value as like a storybook, perfect bow ending. I think there's so many reasons why this
I hope not. That's how I
relationship
took it.
could probably fail. But that's like the risk you take, right?
Well, yeah, okay, so these are the double layers. The reason why, Brandon, I think your interpretation of that scene is wrong is that she would then just take the job. Like, there's
but that
nothing
seems
to
like lazy
think about.
screenwriting to take that, to say yes and that phone call versus I gotta go.
Well,
think
like,
every
I got a
first-year
job, we're
screenwriter
going to
would
be
say.
okay. If that's all I care about, that's
I
what
thought
I'm
she hinted
saying.
about it. She's like, "Oh, it'll be fun." Like, I thought they mentioned, like, it was just a thing. Like, they're being
No, but
coy.
like my
I thought they're
point,
being
which
coy.
is okay, but to the other side of this is that okay, so you're saying it introduces uncertainty that she might bail, right? Like, oh, she's gonna
not
she's
bail,
gonna be
not bail. That their financial material realities will come between them.
well, right, okay, but
Force her to
it's a
bail
reintroduction
case.
of the math, right?
Yes,
which
yes.
I'm supposed to, I think, believe she just said
She's
she no
eradicated
longer
that.
cares about.
Yes.
So the fact,
So I can't believe Adriana.
but I don't
Yeah,
believe
but-
she
but-
made that call. So then when you
Exactly.
reintroduce,
But
well,
that's
but
the
like
thing.
it,
Is like she never had that perfect. Like, I've learned my lesson. I am rejecting.
so but
materiality.
then adding
So
more
it's
of a wrinkle
ambiguous.
doesn't add anything. Well,
I,
it was
I think she
ambiguous to me
did learn her
before that.
lesson. I think I am in the opposite camp. I'm glad we're so polarized. I think we're in the opposite camp. I think she learned the lesson, and she would never be reintroduced to being like, hey, Chris Evans, we're 3 years into marriage or whatever, and yeah, I'm a high-value woman who's 40. Because they also, let me take it back a minute here. They equate a lot of things in the gender gaps here. And again, I'm not like a social studies major here, but the big differences here, they talk about women's weight and men's height. They talk about men's earning and women's age. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important that whenever something's said, like it's like if you hear about the story about like The Rock and Vin Diesel counting punches on Fast and the Furious, and that's why their fight kind of sucks because it's like they had too big of an ego. This movie disperses the punches pretty well. For every weight joke, there's a height joke. There's a whole theme about height being so important to men that's not about how they're perceived by women, but by themselves. And when it comes down to the women thing, they do talk about aging a lot and how it's like how the shittiest men are focused on dating a 23-year-old even though they want more mature. Like, it goes both ways a lot. And I think logically in the rules of this universe, Dakota Johnson, who's the most aware of these dating rules in the marketplace, would not relapse with more money at a higher age. I think if she's 35 and she's struggling to deal with being 35 making $80K a year, her being 45 making $200K a year running the agency, I think the whole movie was her going on this big arc to understand love is something that you can't put a number on. And so, especially with the combined double whammy, that she's just going to get older in this hypothetical ending. Like, this is the best part about this ending, that we're discussing it this much. I don't think it was that smart, but I'm glad we're discussing it because, yeah, I think in the rules of the universe, she ages up and she gets more money. And for women in the marketplace, that's not a good thing. So she's not going to relapse and reevaluate her options based on her in-universe movie rules about dating and aging. She's not going to re-enter the dating pool at 40, divorced, and owe him alimony. That is a lot. You know what I mean? I think based on the universe's rules in the movie, I can't believe she would logically or storyline-wise pursue that. That's where I'm like, that's as hard as I could argue that. But
Okay,
I respect your opinion. That's where I'm
That's
at.
assuming you're assuming it's like a deliberate, conscious decision on her part.
Well, this is
or like
okay.
a-
This yes. I need to get this out because I feel like you you're gonna fucking hate that I'm about to say this. I
If you
think
say monkey, I'm turning it off.
I'm not gonna say that, but I'm going to say I feel like your interpretation is so driven by what you wanted to see from that moment, but I do not think that is what the movie delivers. And I think like this is not a person that at any point in this movie struck me as even caring about relationships of her own. She never once expresses a really craven desire to be in one. She like doesn't even want to be dating Pedro
This is the
Pascal,
thing,
and that
we
just
don't
kind of
know-
happens.
We don't know what she wants. We don't even know if she has friends. We don't know what she likes to do in her spare time. Like, that's
All the
the
women in this
thing,
movie
these
don't have
characters
female
don't-
friends, it seems, which is a big red flag.
Right, but this is again, like everything you just said, Adriana, is totally true, and is why I think this movie just is such a mess. Is that like maybe it wanted to do something like that, maybe it wanted to do something else. It is so unclear to me what it wanted out of that, and like again, Brandon, like again, I feel like this conversation feels like I'm telling and this is gonna make me sound like such a fucking asshole. It's like telling a child that Santa doesn't exist. It's like it's like that's the only way I can explain
Bro,
it.
I watched Red 1. I know he's real, okay?
But it's like I think it's so sweet and endearing that that's the interpretation that you want to come away from with this movie. But like Adriana said, I don't believe that you can just be like, I know that like money really bothers me and like I don't want to have to fight about money and blah blah blah, and I can just consciously decide that it doesn't bother me anymore and that we'll have no problems in our relationship. That's just not true. And I think and I don't think the movie tries to imply that it's true either, because again, like, I do not think this job offer is this bow on, like, we're going to be okay, because then it would just be that. If it was going for this kind of Hallmark, Hollywood, stereotype ending, then just fucking be that. Like, be this sweet moment where we know and we're assured that they're going to be okay, but it doesn't do that. And so, like, again, to me, it's a reintroduction of uncertainty when I was already uncertain. So, like, again, like, maybe like I said, I can see why you kind of came in with that. I think it's just definitely not clear, and I think this is what I find baffling, is that, like, because Adrian and I even talked about, like, oh, like, it seems very cynical a lot of the time, but then it does have these sweet and tender moments. And I'm like, I'm not necessarily, like, I don't think that's a wrong, like, approach, because, like, think about, I'm sure, like, in your own life, where there's moments when you're feeling really high on relationships and the concept of love, and there's moments when you feel very low. I don't think it has to exist and it's only one or the other. It's I don't want to say it's like a spectrum, but, like, it does. There is that. So it's I'm okay with the movie maybe having these sort of conflicting points of view, but it just, like, none of it ever came together in any way that I thought made it clear what I was supposed to feel, what they wanted me to feel, what was the point, what was the any of this. And I feel like that's, to me, why, like, again, like, I don't come down on it as bad, because, like you said, there's technical executions in it that, like, I thought were, like, creative flourishes that I liked. There's one thing I need to mention too before I forget, and then I'll be quiet, because the scene when they reconnect at that wedding, but when she goes outside and they're, like, out in the garage, that was the most fucking awkward scene I've maybe seen all year. And I genuinely, like, again, my interpretation was, I think the movie wants me to think that this is, like, cute and they're reconnecting, but it just was fucking weird and awkward, and I attribute it to the performances, because there was, like, moments, and I want to time them, where there's just, like, 10-second gaps of awkward silence where they're just kind of looking at each other. And again,
some would call that romantic no.
Well, but okay.
I would call that romantic.
Yes, if the fucking facial expression is conveying love and admiration. It was conveying... Chris
Evans was the whole time.
It was conveying
was not.
blank nothingness. And it just paused for 10 seconds on this. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, my theater, not just me and Sam, were laughing at that moment. So I'm like, again, I don't know. This movie seems like it wants... And so that's why I'm like, is it riffing on this stuff? Is it not?
It is almost like a parody.
It was so just calamity. No, that derailed me. I went on a rant. There you go.
What I would say, what I would say, because Shea was basically reiterating, like, how the movie had its awkward moments. It didn't land for everybody in this theater, but I do want a 180, because I do want to talk a lot about the technical stuff. I want to make it a point.
Well, don't sidestep this. We still have time. We can do that. I want you to engage with the kind of points that I was making about, like,
okay, yeah.
Like, again, like, not to shit on you, like, your interpretation's wrong, but, like, I'm surprised at how confident you are, I guess, in that. Because the movie introduces so much uncertainty, and so much of the execution to me undercut that clarity.
Yeah. Well, I find, and again, like, I think in the way I would summarize our debate, not even the movie, but I think the way, because, like, compared to how I felt talking about other movies, everything you pointed or mentioned, I feel like I can really laugh about it, because, like, you're reminding me of such a good time I had with it. It's reminding me of moments that you're like, this didn't work. Only a rock smashing idiot would appreciate this. And I'm sitting there like, that was so cute. I love that. So maybe it's just me, but what I was going to get at to address your points and address what I'm saying too is, when you guys started and you're like, well, the first third was kind of funny, and then it just throughout the rest of the movie, I noticed the general audience had that effect. And I point this out because this is my internal bit. In front of me sat a 5'8" balding man with glasses and his girlfriend, who was marginally more attractive in the marketplace, I would say. I don't know their incomes, but there was a certain joke in this movie where he stopped laughing and she kept going and looking over at him like as if like, oh, he's about to walk out on me. And it was the bit,
short bits.
it was the bit where he was like, she's like, and this is why I liked about her performance, not how it wouldn't, when she would just exposit like, Jessica, of course, blah, 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 blah. Oh, no, it was the roommate joke where it's like, oh, he's getting married? Oh, to the streamer girl? Oh, she does OnlyFans now. And he goes, oh, an OnlyFans whore? That's as good as he could get. He's a 5'8" alcoholic writer who's balding. And the guy in front of me, probably, as far as I know, I don't know if he's a writer or not, did not laugh. And his girlfriend was like, and to me, me witnessing that, again, that human theater experience, but it did make me make a mental note. Was I think I worked on a TV show called Why the Last Man here in Toronto, and that show did not get renewed for a second season. This relates, I promise. The reason why it didn't get renewed for a second season is because in today's TV marketplace, it was apolitical because it lampooned both sides very well. It was like, hey, what if all men disappeared? Women power. Oh, there's no women that work in sewage or bricklaying, or, it's like the gender gap in jobs is very different. So society collapses because men just disappear. So there's like literally one man left in the world, but society's rebuilding with women entering workforces that have never really done it. So it's commenting on why there shouldn't be such a gap, but the fact that there is such a gap. But politically in our landscape, progressive people said this movie's making fun of how the world would fall apart without men, therefore men are great. And then the opposite side, the more manly side, are like, oh, a show with all chicks and men are dead, and they say good riddance, F that show. And I think this movie has the same problem, where I think it is actually genuinely funny and goes both ways and is far more apolitically brilliant than like an Alex Garland Civil War, in my opinion. And I think it does lampoon both sides in whatever gender arguments you may be having in the modern world. And when I saw this guy curled right up on the short, balding, alcoholic writer gag, and his girlfriend looked offended on his behalf, like, no, babe, don't take it so personally. And he stopped laughing for the rest of the movie. And in my head, I was thinking he's probably writing his Letterboxd review similarly, being like, this movie's a mess. It's terrible. Because he was having no fun. And I think if you can go in and be a little bit more neutral or detached, I think a lot of the jokes land. And again, you're right. There is a lot of messiness to it. We kind of did sidestep a lot of the subplot because anytime we say certain words, we get like completely cast to the shadow realm. So, but the whole thing that I was getting at to address what you're saying is the reason why I can thoroughly enjoy this and like still even hearing about how bad it is from a different take. I don't even disagree with you that much. I think there's elements that I feel like personally, again, like the town hall wedding, I would get married at a town hall. I've been to 1,000 weddings. It's such a waste of money. I'd rather a down payment. If I believe in love enough to lose half my income for the rest of my life, of course I'd be that crazy to go there. And that's what I love about the through line of this movie is love is illogical. It doesn't always make the right math sense. It doesn't always make sense. It's crazy. I think if you guys have ever gotten a text from an ex from years past, even if you're like, F them, I'm done, I'm out, I've moved on, I'm a better person. If you've gotten that text from somebody you once felt deeply about, no matter about anything, I think I had an ex DM me over shooting a photography gig, and I've been done with them. We never said a word. We just went our separate ways, and it opened up this floodgate of like, well, what was that like? What was my hangups? What was 23-year-old me dealing with that 30-year-old me is better at or understands better? I think this movie gets the human condition of, I guess, trying to move on, trying to change your approach to love, approach to dating on paper versus dating in real life. It's not always a clean break. Like it does showcase these themes phenomenally well. And you're probably right. It doesn't like nail it all. But for me, a very messy and romantic person, I feel like it hit every time. And it feel like, maybe I was trying to like be smarter about it and say like, this is a recession indicator that the rom-com is talking about men's salaries, men's height, women's weight, and their age to be funny, because otherwise, yeah, I think everyone's really tired of popcorn fluff rom-coms, and this is like a cynical, nihilistic rom-com that I think nails the heart of issues that we face in modern dating. So
my only addendum to what you say, and then I think
Sure.
I'm kind of done on my points, was that I totally agree with you on the groundwork it lays and the setup it lays and the lampooning and all of that. Where you and I think the only spot we diverge is I think this movie embraces that as a sort of, with a sense of hopelessness, frankly,
Yeah,
or
for sure.
or whatever, and you're taking it as like, oh no, like you're saying that's self-discovery, that realization that it can't be that. I kind of like, I think that's fair. Like, that's definitely what they set up. That's definitely what her monologue is in the breakup with Pedro Pascal. But the movie itself doesn't give me any sense that she accepted this and it's that Hollywood ending and love won. I don't believe, like I said, when that ended, and it was totally irrelevant even about all the other reasons they cast out at the end, I never once believed that she had embraced the message in which she conveyed. I think she, like, and I agree with you in the sense that, like, it is true, like, though that matters more than all of these other things, and all of these boxes can be checked, but if you don't have the feeling is ultimately what matters. But I did not take away from the fact that, well, so I'm just going to ignore the things that bother me and embrace the feeling. I just don't think that movie accepted it, and I don't know, again, if it wanted to. And I think, at the very least, I think as a failure on the movie is that, you know, it's not that ambiguous movies like that are necessarily bad or anything like that, but I just think in this case, I just think whatever the movie wanted me to feel, it left me with confusion. And I really don't think that is what the movie wanted me to walk away with. So
no, it does, because that's what love is, man. You can't know for sure. You just gotta have blind faith and optimism, bro. That's, I do.
Did you watch this movie on Molly?
I wish, dude. I was. I
was high as a kite and was like, oh my god, I'm overwhelmed by the message of the power of love.
Yeah,
but,
as you were alluding to, this is a rough week for us all, and this Caesar I'm drinking right now is doing me wonders, because I haven't had a drop of alcohol since like last Saturday, so a long time. But yeah, I went in stone cold sober and I left just like elated. I was like, wow.
Well, and I just want to say on my, not about the movie, but I just want to say that I'm absolutely in no way trying to invalidate how you feel, because that to me is the most important part of a movie. It does not matter. Mm-hmm. Like, all I'm speaking about is how it made me feel, and all you can speak about is how it made you feel, and I can explain like why I think that logic and whatever. But the purpose is, like, I love that this movie made you feel something. Like I said, I was so surprised by that, and but I loved it at the same time. So, like, that's all I think is important.
I want to invalidate what you're saying with a reference to this movie. I find often on this podcast when we're at odds, it can be very personal, but I feel like it's always me either disliking something like heavily when you're like, no,
you're
it's
the
not so
only
bad.
one, by the way.
No, fair enough. But my point of this is, it feels so good to be the wrong person for loving something, and I think that's the great thing I got from this movie. I felt like Pedro Pascal when he's like, it's not that you and I don't work out, it's the fact that if we don't work out, it still proves that I am incapable of liking movies. So it's like, that's when to me being able to like this amongst all the, because this is Amelia Perez again, where I was like, it's not so bad, and you guys were
well,
like,
you didn't give 4.5 to Amelia Perez.
I do not think you're wrong for loving this.
No, I don't either.
It's a very lovable movie if you can get there.
Yeah, I actually think it's very, very fascinating to me, the mixed reactions that this is getting, because I've seen other people say like they really love it, they were emotionally affected, it like changed their outlook on love and dating, and then other people are just like ripping it apart, and I'm like, I came out of it just unsure how I felt, because yeah, there were parts that I was like, oh, this is really working for me, and then other parts that just completely confused me or didn't hit the way that I thought maybe they would, and I find the mixed reaction very interesting.
I do love that, because I do think like I feel like so much is polarizing these days, and I feel like for a movie that's about like fundamentally about love and how to be loved. We argued so much about the big picture. I think, like you said, you're too zoomed in at the start, so we zoomed out all the way and talked about the big head of this movie. But I think there's so many great scenes that really worked for me, and one of them was that scene at the start with the wedding, when she goes to the bride, and it's a joke at first, where she's like, "Don't ever tell anybody, but I'm only marrying him because he makes me feel better than my sister," and everybody laughed at that. But the heart in that scene is when she's a good matchmaker and friend to a degree, and she says, "You distill that down, and I know how shitty that sentence just was. He makes you feel valued. You find value in your relationship to him." And as a matchmaker, she's on paper provided all the circumstances for her to get there. We find out later, of course, she would never have accepted him at all without the height knee transplant thing. But I do think it's like this really important flip. And again, we talked in a little bit about like the workplace plot point with the client. And I think that had to go there to show her kind of transitioning through her career, which I also didn't find as good at all in the second and third act. Where the first act, her career was the thing to make her cynical and nihilistic about dating. And as she loses that cynicism, they had to find a way to kind of like reset her. So when she was the, woman at the wedding talking the bride into getting married because she finds value in the love she
But wait,
has
you
been
took
afforded.
that as like a sincere moment?
Totally.
Oh,
I've seen brides have that
I
moment.
did
I've seen
not-
brides lose their mind the day of and be talked down by 5 women that go, no.
Like, I looked
no.
at that whole thing as totally, like, not
Totally a joke. It's so
manipulative.
real.
Well,
It's
not
so
even,
real.
like, yeah, like, it was a bit, it got a laugh line, but I just mean her distilling that feeling to
He makes
this
you feel valued.
But like, again...
It's a little bit American Psycho, right? Where it's
I-
like he adds value.
No, like, I don't know, like, again, that to me, like, I took that as, like, a wildly cynical beat. To take
Yeah, me
something
too.
that was so inwardly... selfishly motivated and to be like, oh no, that's him just bringing value. He's not doing anything. It's just the fact that he checks a lot of boxes and therefore satisfies my ego. That's not a sweet, endearing. Yeah, that's not a sweet, endearing moment. Like, I came out of that kind of mortified. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that was fucking
maybe
negative,
Dakota
bro.
Johnson's character not Dakota Johnson, I'm not a fan, but her character, Lucy, in this movie, I think I just related to a lot. Again, like, I'm not a Dakota Johnson stan, but
That's
I
clear.
think the character, I felt like some of the dialogue and some of the moments are moments I've been, like, as somebody who's literally been in like the love industry shooting weddings, and like you've been with me to a wedding in Mexico. You've seen exactly how, like, I could do it half in my sleep. I've been. It's probably a bad advertisement for my business, but
I was to say, no one that wants to hire you listens to the pod.
But I think, like, I think at least for me, and again, like, I'm not trying to be like, this was my love language of movie. Like, I've been in so many cynical wedding speeches. Like, I hear 10 wedding speeches a weekend since I was 21 years old. That's 200 and some odd wedding speeches, or sorry, 1,000 almost, 200 weddings times 10 each. So the point of this, I'm not good at math. So the whole point is I've been to so many wedding speeches where it is just like, he makes me warm at night and he lets me pick the Netflix show. I love you, Brian. And it's like, that's it. Or like, oh, thank God for Tinder, because I would have never met the love of my life. And so I do truly believe that there are people in the world who, and I'm not saying like people worse than me. I'm in the camp too, I would say, where love is incredibly hard. It's the hardest thing. Like, it's hard to love people. It's hard to build relationships. It's hard to, and I think having a movie that kind of is cynical about it, because it is a numbers game. When you're a young man learning to date, all the older guys would say like, oh, it's a numbers game. Just keep putting yourself out there. Put yourself out there. And that's what dating apps are. And I think, for women, it's checking boxes. And the combination does create a cynical combo where it is like 2 people getting married off Bumble is probably 1 in 10 of my 200 weddings. So that's probably 20 some odd weddings where it's just been like, I met this guy at 25. We got a dog. We got married. And, to some people, that's it. So I do think a movie that highlights organic love about two people that like kind of hate each other a little bit, who can't accept themselves for who they are, like because of the way they were raised, and they do touch on a lot of that. Like again, maybe it's heavy-handed if you can't give it that space, because I know I was giving it a lot of space to be corny, but I thought it was magical that there's a movie that is so cynical, because love is, it's the best and worst thing, and everybody struggles with it, and they make a point to be like, doesn't matter how wealthy you are. Even this stud Pedro Pascal, his final lines of the movie basically are kind of like, I'm just defective despite being a unicorn, I just can't find it. And she's like, oh, it happens to everybody. You know. And even Renata said like, oh, I thought they would show like him on a beach in Iceland or something, haha. And I was like, no happy endings. Like when you said that, I was like, I agree. I kind of wanted everybody to be a little bit more somber at the end, because Pedro gets kind of just like, that's it. And like a breakup, sometimes it's a conversation in the kitchen at 2 a.m, and you never talk again, and you put it in a box, and that's it. And it was probably this magical upswing, like you said. Like I think it gets the feels, at least my feels, on romance and dating so strongly, and technically, which I do want to talk about. I think there's a lot of technical elements, the cinematography, the way they linger on two people talking in a room for some of these scenes that might be awkward or hard to talk, very strong. And I think they let there be breathing room. Again, the scene where Chris Evans sets stuff down to have a phone call, to me, I immediately realized he dropped everything to have that call. But you only register that because that shot is like an unbroken shot of him sitting down against the bodega for like 20 seconds. In a normal rom-com, it would be like flip, close up on phone, close up answering, wide shot in downtown New York. You know, it stays very intimate. And I think all the roommate scenes, I just got rid of my roommate last year because I traded him for a girlfriend. So I get it. You know, when they show him in his apartment, and I know I'm rambling, I wanted you to interject, but I want to talk about set dressing and scenes. But like apartments and where people live as a set dresser, like as somebody who like, you know, decorates rooms to tell you how people are, this movie nails it pretty well. And I love that they show Chris Evans' apartment. They have this living room. I'm guessing it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom. And he has this teal apartment, which is very like 2012 millennial feeling. And it's claustrophobic. The shots are all like these handheld, kind of tight shots as they're bouncing room to room, having these arguments about the used condom or whatever. Like the filmmaking craft there really illustrated his life, especially when you juxtapose that with the wider angles of Pedro Pascal's mid-century modern uptown penthouse. And it was gorgeous. In fact, it bothered me that his condo felt like it was decorated by the same person as the love agency. Everything was like these same teak wood and mid-century accents that I was just kind of like, they just cooked both times, and it overlapped too much. I wanted his apartment to be different. But anyways, I think the apartments and all the set dressing, all the camera angles, all the filmmaking craft on this movie was so strong. Whatever the corny dislikes that you guys have voiced were creeping up, I was able to really quell that with the technical excellence. And then, like I said, I just think the messaging for me was so strong, and I don't think I've ever said that about another movie. So like I thanks for hearing me rant about it. But yeah,
I'm just happy you're happy, bud.
Oh shit. Okay, I want Adriana to say a few more words. I feel like I can't have that be the ending of the episode.
Well, I agree with you that on the technical stuff, like I thought the cinematography was great. It was shot on film too. It looked beautiful. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting you brought up the apartments, because I saw a lot of people like kind of roasting the movie's understanding of like New York economics. Like there's no way
80 grand a year.
80
yeah,
grand a year and
her
lives in
apartment for
that
80K is
apartment?
poverty.
Like no way. Even like to some extent Chris Evans, like that there was too much
$800
space
a
in
month.
that apartment.
Yeah. For like 2010 with 3 roommates, he pays $800 a month, maybe. But
Yeah.
I was gonna say this too, because I feel like my issue whenever you guys are like the positive ones on movies and I'm really negative, I just want you guys to say one negative thing, and I think there's a few negative things I could say, but I did notice there's a lot of women living in ground floor apartments in these New York buildings. I thought when she went over to her client's apartment, it was the same apartment as hers. I swear to God, it was the same hallway And I feel like they could have done more work to prove that it wasn't the same set they've recycled. She walks into the left door for her apartment. Her client's is on the right door. And I was like, come on. But yeah, like you said, the economics, I think when I was like, wow, 100K is not that much. And I'm like, we have this conversation all the time. I feel so poor in that bracket. I can't imagine Manhattan. Like, that's significantly worse. And I do think it was important that was why it was also worse. So people are willing to pay for a matchmaking service when dating apps are rampant and, whatever. Anyways, kicking a dead horse. I think
the sort of premise of like her being a matchmaker was kind of a clever way to get around like the whole app thing, because it's feasible. And apparently Celine Song actually worked as a matchmaker in her 20s for like a brief period, which I find kind of interesting. But
I kind of believe it, because it's like, it's the same thing as the leg surgery, where it's like, you're not short, you just don't have enough money. You're not lonely, you just aren't paying the right matchmaker. And kind of that Patrick Bateman way, it's like, yeah, you can always be better, do better, just spend more money to solve your problem. And I know we're well beyond this, but I love that scene where she snaps and she's dressing down her clients. And I think that bit probably got the biggest laugh, was when her client's like listing all the things that she needs. And then the kicker was, she's like, you're not going to find a woman in Manhattan who wants another woman, a closet lesbian.
Well, she makes it seem like that was a good little subversion.
That was good.
She's like, I want a conservative, and you just think, and then they're like, I don't know that we're going to be able to find, like,
an openly gay conservative woman who's willing to date a closeted woman with 3 kids who's 45. And it was like, damn. Yeah. So, like, I think all those bits, when they did them, they're like, a little cruel or mean spirit, like what we're talking about. Not they're very cynical about love, but I think they really landed. And to close out, I think why friendship really worked for me is because they elevated the tragedy of male friendships, and they elevated like the love loss you feel when a small moment with somebody can become detrimentally awful, and it's something that you kind of feel intertwined by. It's like a Greek tragedy to make it a funnier comedy, an elevated comedy. And I think with this movie, it takes like a very straightforward rom-com premise, it distills it down, and then it just spews a ton of like very cynical takes very rapidly. And I think for me that worked. I think I liked the very calculated, nihilistic approach. And again, like I said, it's a formulaic movie. It is like, you could have called this movie The Marketplace with Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds in 2005, and it would have been a very similar movie, but just like very more Hollywood. And I think this A24 rom-com is the A24 version, because it's more cynical and more like, I don't know. I think the worst part, I'm digging a hole here, because the reason why it doesn't
let me bail you out, and all I'll
Sure.
say is I saw
Finish
Adriana shake her head when I was thinking of shaking my head, and I think if you've been intrigued by this conversation, I guess encourage you to watch the movie for yourself, because I like, again, like, it's not that I think this is a quality, like an argument on good or bad. I just can't disagree with your interpretation, or at least not disagree. I can't have a more opposite interpretation of the movie than you did, which maybe is a testament to the movie. I do like that. You mentioned polarization, and I said, like, one of the things I find interesting is that we live in the world, where people are often very polarized, but I feel like that doesn't actually exist often in movies. There's either generally like universal praise, universal disdain, and I'm always really intrigued when those splits happen, because, where do you fall? And I think, like, I wish, like, it's, like I said, I don't really have a problem with, like I said, I never, like, I haven't called this movie itself bad. I just, like, it was like, because there's things about it I liked. All of those scenes, I laughed, I was on the wavelength. I feel like for a lot of it, it just didn't come together in a way that I felt like worked. But yeah, I just had such a wildly different experience than you, and in terms of like the interpretations and the feelings that it was eliciting from me. So I mean, like I said, if anything, it's an interesting movie to watch for that reason. So
I think I liked it a bit more than you did, Shea. I actually want to see it again at some point, because I yeah, I want to see how it lands on a second viewing, because I genuinely was so like unclear about how I felt about it, and part of that, I admit, is probably expectationitis, because to me it's like a distinct step down from past lives, and so that in my head it was like I couldn't kind of get past that, so I genuinely would love to see it at some point, to just kind of see where exactly I land on it. But I do think there are things about it that I really liked and that I find really interesting, and clearly we've had a lot to discuss here, so
I
yeah.
appreciate that I went in so blind to this. I've never seen Past Lives. I didn't even know that was like the director for that. Like I went in very like reluctantly. I think like, you know, going into this, I sent you guys a photo of the Disney's How to Train Your Dragon live action adaptation limited edition cup, and I said this is the best part of my night. This movie's going to be dog ass, because I was not.
It was
not in the
homework
headspace
for you.
I said off air, I was like, I did my homework. I saw the rom-com and Life of Chuck, which I'm not going to spoil, but wasn't having the greatest time. So when I went into this movie, bar was real low. I thought I was going to come out with a bunch of rage bait, like this is a psyop to accept broke men, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, when even you, Adriana, said, "Oh, I don't think you guys are going to like it," I was like, "Oh yeah, we'll see." And then when I left the theater, I almost wanted, like, I felt like calling my parents after like a good day or a good date to be like, "Oh, you'll never guess. I just met the most wonderful movie. It had all the right jokes. It said all the right things. It makes $100K a year." Like I was thrilled. I love the movie. I too want to see it a second time around. I joked with Shea about like Wes Anderson movies having like an applause break built in, and I was having such a fun time with this movie. I wonder if I wasn't laughing along with a theater audience, if I would have noticed those more awkward, like, will they, won't they kiss parts that made your theater and you guys laugh for the wrong reasons, you know? So, yeah.
I have
I'm
one
glad.
last question before
Sure.
I kick it to you for a closer, which, well, you... I don't... Actually, you know what? No, because this is going to set you on a tangent, and I don't want to tangent you. No, it was...
I won't tangent. I won't tangent.
No, it was disconnecting your... I don't know. Like, I just feel with the expectations side of it for you in terms of not having any... Like, I was in the same ballpark, but I just adore... What did you mean by the wrong reasons?
I probably
you said, "Oh, we laughed at the wrong reasons, or for the wrong reasons."
No. When,
I was like, "Well, I don't know, dude. That's what I mean." I felt like the movie was.
When I say wrong reasons,
that.
I remember like 15 minutes ago we were talking, and you said probably longer than that. You were saying like there were like when they were outside having a cigarette by the garage dumpsters.
Yeah.
And there was those really genuine awkward moments of like, will they, won't they? And my theater was dead silent because they were like, "Oh, are they?" You know, but your theater was like, "That's so corny," and laughed. You know, so I guess when I say wrong reasons, I mean like the film was trying to elicit my proper reaction, like, which was probably influenced by a good theater versus your maybe
and your beautifully
so bad it's good,
beautiful desire to love, and I think that's my key takeaway. Is I'm so proud of you, buddy, for finding your passion in and your passion for love. And you know what?
I've nothing to gain by loving this movie too. I'm not sponsored. I've outed myself for hating most progressive movies, and I think this movie was like bang on, both being a progressive movie and also a cynical nightmare. So but yeah, thanks for entertaining me. I'm really glad we were able to do this episode of a one movie feature talking all about Materialists. And yeah, I guess on that note, if you guys have nothing left to say, I just want to go back to the color schemes and really dive into what they know. On that note, I want to say, if you're in a movie theater and you're really bored of the movie, for the love of God, don't scroll Facebook Marketplace looking for a new credenza. I had a couple do that in front of me earlier this week, and my biggest regret was not kicking the phone out of their hand and assaulting them in theaters. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.